Today, we're diving into gabapentin. You've probably heard of it. It's prescribed millions and millions of times every single year. But here's the crazy part. What if I told you that its whole story, everything from its name to what it was supposed to do, was all based on a giant mistake? Think about that for a second. It's a pretty wild question, right? Because this isn't just some dry story about chemistry. Nope, it's a story about a massive, accidental discovery, one that ended up affecting millions of people who depend on this drug, a drug that works for reasons nobody saw coming. All right, so to really get how this happened, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. See, when scientists first came up with gabapentin, they weren't aiming to treat pain. Not even close. They were trying to fix a totally different problem. So picture this. It's the 70s and 80s. The mission was pretty clear-cut. Find a new way to treat epilepsy. So scientists got to work and engineered this new molecule. They were pretty sure it would work in a very specific way. And, well, it seemed to. It got its first approval in the 90s, just for seizures. Everything seemed to be going exactly according to plan. And that plan hinged on a neurotransmitter called GABA. Now, the easiest way to think about GABA is like it's the brake pedal for your brain. It's the main chemical that tells everything to just calm down. And we know that if you can boost GABA, you can stop seizures. The whole idea was so direct, so simple, that they even baked it right into the name Gabapentin, a drug literally built to copy GABA. Okay, and here is where the whole story takes a massive twist. The entire design, the whole point of the drug, was to mimic GABA. But, as scientists would later discover, gabapentin doesn't really interact with GABA receptors at all. The name, the design, that core theory, it was all wrong. The foundation was completely flawed. So, you can imagine this created a huge scientific mystery. The drug obviously worked. People were seeing results. But if it wasn't working for the reason everyone thought it was, then what in the world was it actually doing inside the brain? Sometimes figuring out why an accidental discovery works is way harder than making the discovery in the first place. So let's pull back the curtain and see how it really works. So here's a much better way to think about it. Instead of acting like that brake pedal we talked about, gabapentin is more like a volume knob. Its job is to turn down the noise on nerves that are just firing way too much, going haywire. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty for a second. Here's what's actually happening. First, gabapentin latches onto these specific things on nerve cells called calcium channels. What that does is, and this is step 2, it cuts down on the release of excitatory chemicals. If GABA is the brake pedal, these are the accelerator pedals. So by quieting down all those frantic signals, it basically just stabilizes the whole system. And what's the end result? You get fewer pain signals and less seizure activity. Pretty cool, right? And once scientists figured that out, it was like a light bulb went off. Suddenly, this wasn't just some niche epilepsy drug anymore. Understanding how it really worked opened the door to a whole new world of uses. This is where the story gets really interesting. After the drug was out there for seizures, it was the doctors, the ones actually treating patients every day, who started noticing something amazing. As this quote shows, they saw that their patients who also had nerve pain were feeling better. It was this real-world observation that really kicked off gabapentin's journey to becoming a blockbuster. And that discovery just blew the doors wide open. So officially, it's approved for things like seizures and certain types of nerve pain. But because its core job is to turn down the volume on overactive nerves, doctors realize it could probably help with a ton of other things. And that's why it's so commonly used off-label today, for everything from fibromyalgia and anxiety to restless leg syndrome and even migraine prevention. Okay, so since it's used for so many different things, it makes sense to get into the practical side of it. Let's talk about what patients and caregivers really need to know. First off, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of medication. You've got your standard immediate-release capsules and tablets, but there's also a liquid version for people who have trouble swallowing pills. And then there are even extended-release versions like Growlise or Horizont, which are designed to be taken just once a day for specific issues like post-herpetic neuralgia or restless legs. And the dosing, wow, the dosing can be all over the map. One person might feel great on 900 milligrams a day, while someone else might need all the way up to 3,600 milligrams. That huge range really tells you something. This is not a drug where everyone gets the same dose. Treatment has to be super personalized. So how on earth do you manage a range that big? Well, doctors have a pretty standard approach.
They don't just throw you on the highest dose right away. They use a method called titration. Basically, you start low, and then you go slow. The dose is gradually increased over days or even weeks. This gives your body time to get used to it, and it helps the doctor find that perfect sweet spot, where you're getting the most benefit with the fewest side effects.
And that right there brings us to probably the most important part of any conversation about medicine. You always have to weigh the good against the bad. It's all about that delicate balance.
All right, let's look at the pros and cons. On the plus side, gabapentin can be a real game changer for nerve pain and seizures. And a huge benefit is that it doesn't tend to mess with other drugs, and it's not processed by the liver, which is great. But on the flip side, you've got the common side effects. The big ones are dizziness, feeling really drowsy or tired. Some people also get swelling, usually in their legs or feet, or can feel a bit off balance. And there are a few others to be aware of too. Some people report gaining weight, or that feeling of brain fog where you just don't feel as sharp. And this is really important. For older adults, that combination of drowsiness and feeling off balance can seriously increase the risk of falling. So that's something that needs to be watched very, very carefully. So when you step back and look at the big picture, the story of gabapentin is just incredible. It's a journey that started with a mistaken identity, a drug designed for one thing based on a wrong theory that somehow evolved into this super versatile tool for all sorts of other problems. It's a perfect example of scientific surprise, sharp-eyed doctors, and honestly, a little bit of luck. It really makes you think, though, doesn't it? Gabapentin's story is a true happy accident. And if a blockbuster drug like this was basically hiding its true purpose in plain sight, what other secrets are our medicines still hiding? What other accidental cures are just sitting there in our medicine cabinets waiting to be found?